I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, teacher and podcaster, and you're about to start healing from your eating disorder and transforming your life and your relationship with food and body. I've worked in NHS and private practice supporting clients for 20 years, and I believe that recovery is possible for you. This podcast dives into expert interviews, evidence-based psychological approaches, and anecdotal tips from the therapy room from my years of experience. If you're wanting to heal your relationship with food, feel confident in your body, develop self-love and self-acceptance, and create a life of freedom and meaning, then this podcast is for you. Thank you for being here. So today I have a returning guest to the podcast, and I'm talking to Marcelle Rose, founder of Marcelle Rose Nutrition. Marcelle specialises in helping women beat binge eating, bulimia, emotional eating and yo-yo dieting so they can make peace with their body and heal their relationship with food. And she acknowledges that for many people that this is a transformational experience so they can reclaim their life. Marcelle is a BANT registered nutritionist and health coach with specialist training in eating disorders and behaviour change, being a Master Practitioner from the NCFED, the National Centre for Eating Disorders, plus having undertaken further training in Socratic Questioning for eating disorders and body image. Today, Marcelle is going to do a deep dive into binge eating, and she talks about her method for doing this, which is now written down for you in her brand new book, The Binge Freedom Method, and this is now available. Marcelle's approach is grounded in science, eating psychology, and nutritional wisdom, and her transformative approach offers a clear path to freedom from binge, emotional, and compulsive eating. Through 4 essential pillars, nourish, balance, think, and feel, Marcelle explains the tools and strategies to stabilise your eating habits and overcome binge urges and to have a healthy relationship with food. If you're struggling with binge eating, emotional eating, or compulsive eating, this episode is for you. There's so much packed in the conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. So before I delve into this week's episode, I just want to let you know that I've started writing on Substack. If you would like to read about eating disorders and disordered eating, if you want tips and skills from the therapy room, if you want to improve your relationship with food, I'm going to be writing twice a week on Substack. You can subscribe there and get my regular articles. And for every article I am writing, I'm also doing an audio to accompany it. So it's almost like a little extra free podcast. If you are interested to subscribe, do go to the link in the show notes and you can sign up, and hope to see some of you over there. Hi, Marcelle. Welcome back to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, great to see you. So, Marcelle, for people that don't know you, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes. So I am an emotional and disordered eating specialist and nutritionist, BANT registered nutritionist and coach. And essentially have been working with clients for over a decade now, really helping them to heal their relationship with food. So I work with a lot of people who struggle with binge eating, bulimia, people who also might label themselves as emotional eaters, people who've been dieting for many years, so yo-yo dieting, and essentially anyone who's really struggling with body image and relationship with food.
Brilliant. So yes, you cover a wide area, don't you, I think, but really within that disordered eating into eating disorders sort of bracket.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
You have a book coming out soon, don't you? So yeah, do you want to just tell us about your book, which is coming out in January?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's called The Binge Freedom Method. And it's essentially to bring together what are my key 4 pillars for overcoming binge eating and emotional eating, and really looking at the 4 pillars, which are nourish, balance, think, and feel, which I can tell you a bit more about. But the idea was that I really wanted to, firstly, remove the stigma around binge eating, because there is so much stigma involved in terms of just the way people are thought of or think of themselves in terms of binge eating. Also, I felt like there just wasn't anything out there, that a resource that pulled together all the sort of key areas, because just working on one area alone, I personally think is not going to be as effective, and to be able to create that sort of long-term change that's sustainable, essentially.
Yeah, no, sounds fantastic. And how did you find the book writing process? Was it enjoyable?
Some of it was enjoyable. I have to say, it's been 2.5 years in the making. So it's been a long time. It's true what they say about birthing a child. It does feel like that, but longer. But it has been really interesting because though I've wanted to bring in sort of clinical experience and all my learnings over the time and how I've worked with clients, I've also been able to really dig into some of the research. And I think that side of things has been interesting, and it's been great to be really stuck into this project. But at the same time, it's all the sort of bits and pieces with the publishing that can be quite painful as well.
Yeah, no, sure. Have you always wanted to write a book? Has it been one of your dreams that's been on your vision board or whatever you have, your goals?
Yeah, I think it's been one of those things that I've always wanted to do, but it was never really a proper idea until I thought there's just nothing out there that really addresses this issue in a holistic way, I felt, that is sort of a manageable way and actionable way to really kind of be able to make change yourself. That's what made me decide, partly, and also partly because I was essentially, when I work with clients, I'm usually working with them for quite a period of time, usually 6 months minimum. And I can obviously only work with a certain number of clients at a time. And obviously for everybody, that's just not doable. It's not affordable. I wanted to be able to kind of reach other people and help people, broader reach of people, really.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Well, good for you. And I'm really nosy, actually. Can I just ask you a bit about your process for writing? Were you like getting up at like 4 a.m. or something, or what were you doing?
I definitely wasn't doing 4 a.m. starts. Gosh, no. I had to put days aside. So certain days a week, I would put aside and make sure I wasn't seeing clients because it was so impossible. Initially, when I started, I was doing bits here and there, and it just, then I'd forget what I'd written and, have to keep going back and reading over. So I really had to have big chunks of time put aside to do it and make sure I was doing it, take myself out of my office sometimes into cafes and things, and literally just head down and get on with it so I'm not distracted.
Yeah, no, goodness. Well, well done you. Because I think it's a massive commitment, isn't it, to write a book, I think. And like you say, like probably like birthing a child, really. Yeah, it must be really exciting to just almost be the kind of finished post. But will there be a second book? Is that, can you even think about that yet?
I was thinking about something, but then I was like, oh no, let's get.
You really need a few months, won't you?
Let's have a break.
Yeah. So, Marcelle, I know you've had your own journey with sort of food and body image. You've been on the podcast before, and I know you sort of talked us through that story a bit then, and I will definitely link that in the show notes. But for anyone that doesn't know you, could you just give us a little overview of how you came to sort of do what you do today?
Yeah, sure. Initially, I was actually working in my old career many, many, many years ago as a fashion buyer. It's interesting that I've kind of almost now I'm helping people with their body image. I feel like that was almost the opposite, the paradox of that. Yeah, I came from that job, wasn't looking after myself in that career. And I think it got to the point where it felt quite unsustainable. And I had all sorts of gut issues and things like that. And then retrained as a nutritionist and started working a lot with gut health. But then people were coming to me and they really wanted help with weight loss, but I felt that wasn't particularly my area or anything, but I felt there was underlying issues going on. And yes, they were desperate to lose weight, but there was a whole lot of stuff going on that needed to be addressed. And I felt like I didn't have the necessary skills to help them properly. And that's when I sort of embarked on further training. I did coaching training and I did the eating disorder training. And that was when it changed my whole approach to working. And I really just wanted to really work with these particular clients, anyone struggling with disordered eating, to really help them and work in a very different way.
Yeah, no, thanks.
And that's how I got there. Actually, one thing that I can't even remember, I probably said before in our last podcast, but one of the things I realized when working with eating disorders in this area and when doing that training, I realized that as a nutritionist, you can become a little bit over obsessive, certainly in the early days. And I could see that pattern of becoming obsessive about the healthiness of food, for example. And that's one of the things that I think the eating disorder training really helped me with, so that had a much more balanced approach, and it stopped me heading down that possibly darker road into orthorexia, perhaps.
Yeah, no, sure. And I think it's a great point, isn't it? Because I think sometimes it's very hard to know where the line is, in a way, between being very healthy and orthorexic. The lines become quite blurry, don't they? And I think there's probably a lot of people out there struggling with orthorexia that perhaps don't even realize it. They consider that they're just being very, very healthy.
Absolutely. That was something that I think is probably quite common. You'll see that with the nutrition training. It's kind of understandable, but it was really a bit of a mind-blowing experience by going through the eating disorder training to really see my thinking, understand my thinking, but also get inside the minds of people struggling with different various eating disorders and really understand the challenges, thoughts and beliefs and things around food.
Yeah, and it sounds really helpful, that whole process. So you're going to talk to us a bit about the 4 pillars, your unique approach in terms of how you address binge eating, emotional eating, etc. Would you like to launch in and tell us a bit about the kind of 4 pillars that are really important in your approach?
Thank you. So yes, the 4 pillars are nourish, balance, think and feel. And I've started with nourish because that's essentially guiding you to make the practical changes in your diet that will support your physiological needs. So it's really about what can you add in to help you in this process to reduce the cravings, to help you feel more stabilize your blood glucose levels so that you feel more stable in your eating. And also, a lot of people who struggle with binge eating may have nutritional insufficiencies because perhaps a proportion or a bigger proportion of their diet might be the binge foods that are less helpful foods. So how can we start to add into the diet very gradually so that it doesn't feel overwhelming and make helpful choices rather than falling back into other rules and regulations? So it's a gentle approach, also dispelling a lot of the myths and misconceptions surrounding dieting, which is really important, and sowing the seeds for some later work within the book. But it's about adding into and actually just regulating your meals, adding those meals back in so that you're feeling like it's sustainable, but you're not going to end up with those big urges, huge urges for binges and cravings later on in the day, perhaps, when often that happens. I wanted to make it a really step-by-step, simple approach because I know that for many people, trying to make those changes feels very overwhelming. So that's nourish, essentially.
I wanted to say to you, really, because I think as you're talking through that as well, it sounds very simple, doesn't it? We can kind of all hear that and think, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea, like eat regularly, etc. But for many people as well, I find with my clients, I'm sure you find it's incredibly hard, isn't it, to put that into practice. And also, I think sometimes when you've been dieting a lot, any kind of plan, even if it's regular eating, which is more kind of framework, isn't it, rather than a strict thing, it can feel very restrictive again, can't it? So I'm just wondering as well, like you use the word kind of gentle, and it sounds like you're adding in, and it's all around kind of choice and empowerment, isn't it? But I'm just wondering, how do you help your clients with some of that? And when they're perhaps really struggling, that it feels like, oh my God, this is just another plan in a way, but it feels like a diet.
Yeah, absolutely don't want it to feel like a diet because it really isn't. But it's about, I suppose, starting where they're at. So really understanding what's going on. And often the eating is very chaotic, but just starting with perhaps one meal and looking at that meal and looking at what some of the things that my client might like or might already be eating, and how can we just tweak that meal to make it more nutritionally balanced so that they feel more sustained and that takes them through for longer without feeling intense hunger and cravings. So it's about what can we gently add into what they've already got. So we work from where they're at, seeing current meals and building on that, just building in, but very slowly so that it does feel doable. And obviously we can use different ideas and strategies to help make that easier for them, such as maybe making extra of that meal so they can have it for lunch the next day, and so on, any kind of things, batch cooking and things like that. But sometimes it's just keeping it really, really simple and using something like, for example, if you're adding in some grains to your meal, at first maybe just buying the ready cooked pack of grains to add a portion of that in, or buying a salad bag that you can have a handful of that in without having to do much prep work. Sometimes it's really, really simple things that they can just add in, but also trying to make it tasty as well so that they're actually enjoying their food. That's really important too.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? Because I think often if you've been struggling with binge eating disorder or something, you're either kind of eating very bland, kind of tasteless food, aren't you? Or you're completely going the other way where your senses are probably massively overstimulated with lots of sugar and salt and everything. You're trying to help them navigate that kind of more middle, peaceful ground, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, please carry on.
A balance was really about looking at key physical systems that influence your appetite and cravings. And I think these are things that people don't know about necessarily, don't know the correlation between, or perhaps don't think about, because there's so much self-blame when it comes to binge eating, that it's all about me and that I'm not doing things right, or I'm failing, or I'm lazy or greedy. But actually so many different things can influence your cravings and your hunger and your eating patterns. So I look at things like hormones, your brain chemicals, the neurotransmitters, things like serotonin, for example, the impact that that can have on your eating. Hormones could be appetite hormones or your reproductive hormones, and the impact that that has on your eating behaviors. And also things like your circadian rhythm and sleep, and even your gut microbiome as well. So I wanted to bring in things that you can make changes, some simple changes to help support that, which helps in turn reduce those hunger and cravings and help you have more balanced eating patterns. And at the same time, understanding where eating behaviors can have an impact on those systems and how you can kind of be stuck in that cycle, really.
Time for a short advertisement break. Are you a counsellor, dietitian, therapist, nutritionist, personal trainer, or other mental health professional? Are you seeing increasing numbers of your clients struggling with eating disorders and disordered eating? And are you keen to learn skills and strategies and build confidence in working with your clients who struggle with these issues? We know that increasing numbers of people are struggling with eating disorders, and we know that 85% of people with eating disorders are not underweight, and this means that many eating disorder symptoms are hidden. The Good Childhood Report in 2021 highlights appearance as a leading cause of unhappiness among young people and indicates that appearance concerns are increasing year upon year. So join my Eating Disorders Training Day on Zoom, face-to-face, or self-paced online. It will give you a really good understanding about the different types of eating disorders, including anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and OSFED, with an introduction to RFED and neurodiversity and eating disorders. You'll explore typical causes of eating disorders and understand how to create a psychological formulation for your client, and this will be brought to you by relating to client examples. I will take you through then my specific knowledge, skills, and techniques, which can be used when supporting clients with eating disorders. You will get a full comprehensive training manual and access to the recording of the training afterwards and a full online version of the course. If you want to sign up, please go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk, and you might also be interested in my body image training for professionals too.
Sure, no, so helpful. And can you say a little bit more about sleep, actually? Because I think that's such a common one. I mean, I think they're all common, aren't they? All these things you're talking about. But so many people struggle, don't they, to get a really good quality sleep. And it's massively impactful, isn't it, to our eating on the following day and subsequent days?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that if you've had a poor night's sleep, it's going to affect your appetite hormones so that you'll be more hungry and you'll have more cravings, and you're likely to crave the less helpful foods the next day. So we do see that. I mean, I notice with myself, we know that this happens scientifically as well. And also you're going to, if you have poor night's sleep and you're tired, you're more likely to be less motivated to actually look after yourself. You're going to have lower energy. So it can create the perfect storm for sort of binge eating. But actually, if we can start to really focus on our sleep and try to bring in some easy things that can really help support your sleep and your circadian rhythm, then that can make such a difference. And you can feel a lot more motivated and stronger, I think, the next day, and more empowered to be able to do some things for self-care, to look after yourself, to prepare those meals.
Yeah, no, I'm so with you, because I often think like binging in a way, it's often the end point, isn't it, of many things that have built up to lead you to almost the edge of the cliff. I think sleep itself is such an important one, isn't it? If you can kind of nailing that a bit more, you've just got so much more resilience, I think, haven't you, to deal with your eating.
And also, obviously, it can impact your mood and your stress levels and so many different things.
So true. So true. Okay, moving on then to the next one. Is it think?
Think, yes. So think, I really wanted to highlight the way you think impacts how you feel and ultimately your eating behaviour and different behaviours. In this section, I really address your thinking and beliefs about food, dieting in your body that essentially can be keeping you stuck. So really wanted to introduce exercises to help enhance self-awareness and reprogram your thinking patterns. So it's really about your mindset, and that's such a big part. I'm sure you'll agree. This includes also tackling those ingrained habits as well, in a way so that you can start to build more new helpful behaviours.
Say a bit more about the mindset side of things as well, in terms of, I guess there might be some people listening who are quite new to all of this actually, and have never really considered how much their mindset impacts their eating. So yeah, can you say a bit more?
Okay. Essentially, I think we all bring with us to our eating and to our relationship with food a lot of old beliefs that we have developed over time. And it might be to do with family, upbringing, all sorts of things from early childhood and around body image as well as food. So it might be something like our parents were dieters or always talking about weight, and they might have made certain comments continuously and talked about good and bad food, and you shouldn't eat this and you shouldn't eat that. From there, you can start to develop this kind of all or nothing mindset around food and eating, just as an example, and have certain thoughts and beliefs about food and about the morality of eating unhealthily, in inverted commas, or eating bad food. It can be so much, it can be so complex. But just by starting to notice those thoughts and those beliefs and where they've come from can be really helpful to start to unravel that unhelpful thinking and mindset around it. Very often we're coming up with thoughts that we don't actually even realise it, that they're probably subconscious half of the time. So if we can start to be conscious of those thoughts, we can start to reframe them slightly into more helpful thinking, because often those thoughts are the things that are going to lead to or keep you stuck in that same behaviour.
Yeah, we tend to think of our thoughts as facts, don't we? Like you're saying, in a way, that's often not true, is it? These thoughts that we're having are often formed with beliefs from very young age, in a way, and we've just absorbed, haven't we, things from our environment and perhaps never questioned things. They feel very, very true, don't they? So that can feel difficult to shift sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. It can take time, but I think at least once you start to have that awareness, you can start to do something about it. But absolutely, the thoughts, to know that your thoughts are not facts, and that actually there's another way, there's always another way of thinking about a situation. And it's not about flipping it so that you're always positive about the situation. I think it's just slightly shifting your perception of that situation.
Yeah, I sometimes say to my clients, you just kind of almost got to get your hand on the first rung of the ladder, haven't you, really? And start with something that does feel like it could be true. You don't want to be like toxically positive, do you?
No.
But I think what I was just thinking when you were talking as well is, I think about those placebo studies and how when people are kind of operated on, but they're told they're being given anesthesia or whatever, and they're not, anesthetic, and they're not. Like the mind-body connection is so, so powerful, isn't it? And I think we do often forget that, really. And actually, when we can really tap into the power of our mind and shifting our mindset, it's really profound on how much can change.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it's amazing when you see with clients and they almost have that light bulb moment. It's like, oh, okay. It can be kind of a profound moment when sometimes it can take a long time and then suddenly there's a shift out of nowhere. But it's sowing those seeds and doing that work. And I just wanted to be able to create that different tasks and exercises in action steps within the book to be able to do that without feeling overwhelmed and to really understand what's going on. So it's helpful.
Okay, and then the last pillar is feel. So tell us more about feel.
Yeah, so feel is really about understanding the impact of your emotions on your eating habits. So really gaining an insight into regulating difficult feelings and starting to develop new, more helpful coping mechanisms. And within this, I've also put other techniques to manage your cravings. So we've done techniques the whole way through the book, really, but there might be physiological cravings we're working on at the beginning of the book, but then we start to look at the sort of emotional reasons behind cravings and lots of techniques to try and work through that and really try and build more helpful coping mechanisms through that.
Sure. And I think the feeling part is often very challenging for people, isn't it? Because of, I think when you struggle with food, you are often quite disconnected from your body. And
Yes.
you don't even realize really what you're not feeling. You just got this big disconnection going on. And it can also be scary, can't it, to perhaps remove the coping behavior, the binging or whatever, and to wonder, will I be able to deal with what comes to the surface? Can I manage my feelings? It can feel a bit scary.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why the feelings bit comes last, because I think by that point, hopefully, you've worked through the different pillars and you feel much more resilient with other things. So you know you've got the foundations of your nutrition in there, you know that you've worked on other things to help with the balance of your body, and you've sort of got a bit more of an idea and understanding about your thoughts. So that's almost like the last bit, and understanding the difference between your thought and a feeling and how they connect with each other. Absolutely, it can feel really scary. And I know for lots of my clients, the idea of letting go of those binge eating behaviors can feel very scary. And often there is that resistance sometimes because of that. But it's about understanding, they get that understanding of what's keeping them stuck there, but start to have some new behaviors in there that they know that they can turn to, so that they know that they've got things to support them and help them cope, so they're not left with nothing.
Yeah, and it's so important, isn't it? You kind of need a replacement sort of strategy, don't you? Where you can feel a safe way of dealing with things. And I guess what I'm thinking as well is often when we delve into the feelings part as well, we kind of realize this is kind of more than healing my relationship with food. Something we have to address, maybe if we've been people pleasing a lot in relationships or not having boundaries, or it can bring a lot to the surface, can't it? Which can feel challenging, but actually also very empowering, I think, when you start to deal with things differently.
Absolutely. And I brought some of that into the book as well, because I think that's really important. Also, those relationships with people and who you can also rely on for support, how they can support you, but also relationships that perhaps are not necessarily helpful. And it's navigating that as well. Certainly boundaries around food and dieting and weight talk, for example, I think is really important, and just being able to feel empowered with that, so that that can really help deal with a lot of those difficult feelings around those areas.
Sure. And your book sounds like very practical, actually. It sounds like you're almost kind of walking your clients through the journey, aren't you? And kind of holding their hand, giving them information, and then giving them kind of tasks and things that they can put into practice. Sorry, did I call them clients? I meant readers.
Yes, no, absolutely. That's why I really wanted them to have the information there, so that they feel empowered with that information and realize, oh, actually, it's not all about me failing or whatever, or not being able to do things properly, but also making it actionable so that you do actually do it. So it's not about just reading the book, it's about really doing the actions. And if you do the action steps, that will really help you to progress forward.
Yeah, no, amazing. So your book's coming out the third week of January, isn't it? I think you were saying Thursday the 16th, ideally, hopefully, if it all goes to plan. So I'm guessing there could be some people listening that might want to get hold of the book when it comes out, but also there might be some people listening who might want to work with you or find out more about what you do. So can you sort of tell us a bit more about direct people to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it will be available, or it should be by now, perhaps depending when this episode drops, available on Amazon, available, in fact, on waterstones.com, Nielsen's, in fact, all the online bookstores it will be available to buy from. And you can have also head over to Marcelle Rose Nutrition, my website, so you can check in more information about it on there. But also you can download, if you want to get started, I do have a free, it's called Breaking the Cycle Starter Kit. There's some key things in there to help you get started on healing your relationship with food. And I also have the Food Freedom Collective Facebook group. So if you head over to there, you'll get all the links so you can join that for support. And I'm also hoping that anyone with the book who wants that extra support can come into the Facebook group, because then I can answer questions and they feel like they've got that extra support along the way as well.
Yeah, no, brilliant. It sounds amazing, Marcelle, actually. It sounds like you kind of got it covered there, I think, for different access points for people, actually, so they can get the support from you, which sounds brilliant. So do you have any kind of final messages or anything that you'd want to say to the listeners, perhaps for anyone who's really struggling and, feeling a bit stuck and needing a bit of inspiration?
Yeah, I'd say, first of all, it is absolutely possible to overcome binge eating. I've been working with people who have been perhaps their whole life into their 60s, 70s, and they've managed to overcome it. So whatever stage you are, it is possible. And it's about, one of the key things I think is being compassionate with yourself and just know that you just need the right support and it's not your fault and you're not to blame, and actually just start to have that compassion with yourself is so important, so that you can actually start to look after yourself. And then when you're not despising or loathing your body and you're having some respect for your body, then you're much more likely to be able to introduce more helpful behaviours to support you.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, a bit of wisdom there. And I think it's something that many of us struggle with, this to actually really, truly to be self-compassionite. We don't live in a very self-compassionate kind of world, do we? It's very sort of strivey, go hard or go home, keep pushing yourself kind of vibe, really. Yeah. And I think we often see self-compassion as a bit kind of counterproductive. I guess when we think about how we motivate our children or anyone we love, we do it with a lot of compassion and support, don't we? And encouragement. We're not kind of being really unkind and beating them up with the words. So thank you, Marcelle. Great bit of wisdom to finish on. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and being a guest again on the podcast. I shall make sure all the links go in the show notes, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will be buying your book.
Thanks so much, Harriet.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. Do go and check out all of Marcelle's info in the show notes. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the Eating Disorder Therapist _. For further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. If you enjoy this podcast, I'll be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach other listeners. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.